Fish and Rice, Stories from Japan. I'm Toby, and today I'm welcoming Mitch. You came all the way from Kagoshima this morning.
Yeah, I sat on a Shinkansen for 4 hours.
Thank you very much for making it all the way here.
No, it's my pleasure to come. I love Osaka. This is like one of my favorite cities in Japan.
Yeah, it is a great city, and we have good reasons to have you here because you've got quite the experience here in Japan.
Do I?
From teaching English to opening your own school to opening a media company and running your own podcast.
Yeah.
And we want to know a lot more about it. But let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
Where are you from and what brought you to Japan?
So originally I'm from Las Vegas in America, and I was born and raised there. But my mom is from Sasebo, Nagasaki, here in Japan.
Oh.
So she was born right after the war, and she's half Japanese and half. In Japanese we say half American, but what they really mean is like half Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
And so my grandfather, her father was a sailor, and he was a white American, and then he had a girlfriend in Japan, my grandma, and they dated for a little while, and then my grandfather got into a little bit of trouble. I think he got into a fight or something, and he got sent home.
Oh no.
And when he got sent home, he didn't know this, but my grandmother was pregnant. And so my grandmother gave birth to my mom as a single mother in Japan after the war. And if you guys know anything about history, basically post-war Japan didn't really like foreign people so much.
Yes, there was quite a situation.
So now in the media, half Japanese people are like celebrated. You know, they're like super cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after the war, they were called ainoko, which means like the meeting child, like it means like half breed basically. Mm-hmm. And it's a slur that they used to use against half kids after the war, and that's what my mom was called frequently. And she was kind of raised in I want to say a little bit of an abusive situation. So when she was a teenager, her and her mother moved to America, I think my grandmother married a different sailor, and then they moved to America. And then my mom graduated from high school and then went to university for a couple of years in America, and then along that line, she had me, and I actually have 6 brothers, so I'm one of 7 boys.
Quite a big family.
My mom wanted a girl, and she tried 7 times, and it didn't work. So I'm one of 7 boys. But the reason why I came to Japan, to answer your question, is that when I was a kid, I got a phone call, and it was a Japanese guy, and he was like, "Hi, moshi moshi," and I was like, "What is this?" Because I never.
So you were like in Las Vegas, and suddenly some Japanese person calls you,
right?
And moshi moshi.
Yeah, I'm like in Las Vegas. I think maybe 7. I don't remember. And like I don't know that my mom is half Japanese. Like she kind of hid it, and my dad was kind of like, what's the nice way to say racist? He's kind of a traditional guy, and so he was like, "My house is like all English. Don't speak Japanese here."
Okay.
And so I didn't even know my mom was half Japanese. And because if you look at her, she just kind of looks maybe a little Italian or something. And then then I gave her the phone because I don't know what this is. So here, you take this. And my mom started speaking Japanese for the first time in front of me. And I was like, what is this magical language? And then after that, I started asking my mom more and more questions about Japan. And when my father passed away, my mom decided to like incorporate Japanese culture into our house. And so like when I was a kid, I'd be watching things like Nihon Mukashi Banashi, which is like the Japanese NHK produced folklore anime series that every Japanese person's seen. And then I also would watch TV shows like Crayon Shin-chan and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So like I was raised on that kind of stuff. And then when I turned 14, in Las Vegas, we have a system of high schools called the Magnet Program. And it's basically like if you test into the specialty high schools, you can go to a much better high school than your like home zoned high school. And so I tested into a high school called Las Vegas Academy, where I went to high school for 4 years and I studied Japanese there. In university, I studied everything. I tried to never leave university. So they actually had to kick me out in the end. They were like, you need to graduate.
You've spent too many semesters here. You've got too many credits, but...
Yeah. So yeah, I got pulled into to my advisor, and my advisor, because I switched my major every semester-ish, I'd switch my major. So I never really accumulated credits in one area. And I was getting crazy scholarships at the time.
So a lot of credits, but never enough to graduate in one field.
One field. And because I was getting so much in terms of like scholarships, and I was also working at Cirque du Soleil at the time. And Cirque du Soleil has like a tuition matching program. And so I was just getting tons of money to like study, and it was great. And so I was like, I'm gonna do this forever.
Every student's dream.
Yeah, it was great. And so one day I got pulled into my advisor's office, and they're like, we know what you're doing. It was like, you need to graduate, or I forgot how many credits you get, but after a certain amount of credits, they consider you something called like a professional student. I don't remember the details, but like after that, all of your credits become more expensive. And so basically, and at the same time, one of my scholarships had like a 6-year limit on it. So they basically said, if you don't graduate within like one semester, like the table will turn. Well, you'll actually have to spend money to come here. So I was like, okay. And so they looked at my transcripts and they saw that because I love English classes, literature, and creative writing. So I took a ton of English credits over the years. And so they're like, if you take Latin, this is so weird. They're like, if you take one semester in Latin, you can graduate with an English degree or English literature degree.
Perfect logic, right?
And I was just like,
you've got all these English credits, but if you take Latin, then you have your English degree.
So I never majored in English, so I never thought about racking up English credits. Like I never thought that would be a problem, or I guess in this point, it wasn't a problem, it was a good thing. But like, so he's like, declare English as your major, take Latin, and you can graduate at the end of the semester. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what next? And
so you have a degree in English and you have family ties to Japan.
Before my degree in English, before graduation. And I forgot to say this, when I was 14 years old, I did a homestay in Kansai.
Okay.
And so I was here for a summer in like the countryside. And so like I always wanted to come back to Japan. Like I wanted to like experience my mother and grandmother's roots. And so I'm sitting there in university. I'm like, okay, I have to graduate. What's the most irresponsible thing I can do after graduating? And I'm like, JET program, because the recruiters came to my university. And so I was talking to them, and the recruiters are basically like ALTs, assistant language teachers that like went home and then they like do like volunteer work and stuff like that for the JET program.
Try to get more people to join and sign up. Yeah.
I mean, they might get paid. I have no idea. But like they came to my university and I was just like, hi. And they're like, hey, are you interested in coming to Japan? I was like, and how? And so I came to Japan as an ALT and I did it for 1 year. And I went to like, when you fill out your application, there's a part where you can write like where you want to go.
But you don't really choose. You can just like kind of write
ask.
Preferences.
Yeah, your preference. And basically the JET program doesn't exist in big cities like Osaka, Yokohama, and like Tokyo because they use dispatch companies. And so you're basically limited to like smaller cities and countryside. And so I looked at a map of Japan and I was like, what's the most southern area? Because I don't like cold places. It's like, what's the most southern area that's not like a faraway island? And I was like, Kyushu. Okay, what's the most southern part of Kyushu? Kagoshima. I was like, okay, I want to go to Kagoshima. And during my interview, the interviewer was like, you want to go to Kagoshima?
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's like, are you sure? I was like, I don't know. And I was like, I saw a picture of Sakurajima and Kinko Bay, which is Sakurajima is like a giant active volcano in the middle of the bay in front of Kagoshima City. And I was like, yes, Kagoshima sounds great. And so they sent me to like the middle of nowhere, like Farmville in like a very cold area, kind of on top of a plateau.
So exactly what you didn't want.
Exactly what I didn't want. And I was like, but that was okay because like the people were super cool. The thing that was a problem was that the job absolutely sucked. And the reason why is because we basically didn't do anything. Like I was getting paid a really good salary compared to the other people in the town. And like I was told to study Japanese. And I was like,
why is that?
Because they didn't have, because the management for what the JET program does is they put you into a position with a local contracting organization. So you're either working for like the Board of Education in some area or you're working for a high school in some area. And so those people become your actual employer. And they are mandated to use an ALT. So this is kind of a nuisance for them. Some of these places don't really want you to be there. Oh. Because like it's mandated by the federal government. You know how Japan government works.
I thought those schools would be actually more looking forward to have maybe more support in native English language teaching for the students.
Schools, yes. The contracting organization, the people who manage the ALT, they not everywhere. Every situation is different. That's like the what is it? Like the catchphrase of the JET program. But like most contracting organizations don't want to manage the foreign person. And so what they tend to do is they like make a very generic schedule for you where you're basically free to do anything most of the time. And then you just have a ton of free time. Now, again, not all ALTs like this. Some ALTs work really, really hard and they're like, they do like, like morning to evening classes.
But in your case, it was super boring.
But in my case, it was really boring. And I've heard from countless other ALTs that they had the same exact situation. Anyway, so I was there and I was like, I think it was 6 months into my 1 year contract. And they came with a paper and they're like, here's your paper. We want you to recontract for next year. And here's the thing. When they sign up a new ALT, it's really like mendokusai, it's really annoying for the contracting organization because they have to switch all the paperwork to the new person. They have to help you find a cell phone, all this stuff. And so they want you to stay. If you're not complete garbage, they want you to stay as many years as possible because that allows them to do less work. And these people are generally overworked. So I do have sympathy for them. They're generally overworked. They don't want to do more things. And they also, most of these people don't speak English. And the ALT doesn't need to speak Japanese. In my case, I could speak Japanese, so it was okay. But anyway, so they came to me with my recontracting papers. And I just said, no. And they're like, what do you mean no? I was like, no, no. I didn't say I was going home. I was like, I don't want to recontract.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because like I was sent to Kagoshima to teach English.
And you didn't teach English.
And I wasn't really teaching English. I wasn't really making an impact. I mean, I was friends with the students. The kids were great. And one of the really cool things is like my youngest brother, he got to come visit me for a summer and we enrolled him into junior high school. So because Japanese kids go to school forever. And so like he was able to go to the junior high school for I think 10 weeks. And so like there's a lot of cultural exchange happening, but the job situation sucks. There's a term in Japanese called kyuryo dorobo, which means salary thief.
Yeah.
And so that's what I felt like the whole time. Like I'm getting this undeserved salary every month. And it was just kind of depressing. So I said, sorry guys. And, but I wasn't satisfied. Like I came here to do something. So I was like, all right, what do I want to do? And I started thinking about it. I was like, the easiest way for me to make an impact is just to make my own school. Like here, I just saw you guys' like really cool facility here. You guys seem to be like a very kind of like international company.
Yeah, it's
here.
a very international space. Lots of people from different countries, and
I don't see any fax machines.
Well, there's probably one somewhere if we dig deep, because I'm sure that for some of our clients we may need a fax. But no, it's more like digital and
there's
modern
no
technologies.
There's
AI.
no like young Japanese girl in the corner making tea or anything like that.
Whoever is available to make tea will make tea. It doesn't have to be a Japanese girl.
Right. So like we're making fun, but Japanese corporate structure is kind of, it depends on the company, but it's kind of old fashioned.
Yeah, it is.
And so I didn't want to work in a place like that. So I don't want to, I didn't want to continue a situation like that. So I was like, okay, what do I do? I'll make my own school. So I made my own school. Oh my God, 13 some odd years ago. And
I think you mentioned like you opened June 21st, 2010.
Yeah, 2010. So I started preparing for the school 6 months before that. So
it only took you 6 months to get from like, okay, I'm going to open a school to here's my school.
So the cool thing was that while I was in Kagoshima, because Kagoshima is it's a pedestrian community. Like you walk around everywhere. And so you like,
not even cycle, walk.
You just walk. I mean, well, the downtown area anyways. Yeah. And so like, as I'm walking around these days, like I can't go 5 steps without saying hello to somebody. It's like Sesame Street. It's like very compact. There's little characters that pop out of everywhere. It's really cool. And so because the community in Kagoshima is so like tightly knit, like it was pretty easy for me to network my way into getting the things that I needed done. And then also I had the super like very, 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 very like amazing luck of meeting a manager at a local, I'm not gonna say the brand, but a local like vintage shop. And she was really young and she was a hustler. And I asked her, she's a Japanese girl, and I said, hey, I wanna do this thing. We're friends, can you help me? Because she had experience helping there was basically 2 foreign people in the city of Kagoshima at this point. It was like me and this other guy who opened.
This was 2010.
2009. And so like the other guy, he opened a bar, and then that became like this super like stylish like Portuguese wine experience thing. Now he's cool. And the other guy was me, and I was just like, okay, you helped him open his bar. Can you help me open an eikaiwa school? And that was like 13 and a half years ago. And she's just been like, we've been together ever since. Like we just like, everybody thinks we're married. That's how like we're always working together. So we're not, by the way, but poor her, she can't find a husband. But yeah, so we opened the school, and I told her, I was like, I have like this crazy vision where I don't want this school to be anything like Japanese curriculum, like anything like a Japanese school. I want it to be very, very foreign, very, very weird. And eventually we actually developed this thing called English Quest, which is like a RPG. It's like Dungeons and Dragons, but with English. And so the kids, when they enter the room, it's all the rooms are very themed. And when you enter the room, like you think that you're in a LARPing. Do you know what LARPing is? That's really geeky.
LARPing.
Live action role playing.
Okay.
This is like where geeks around the world go in a field, dress up like a wizard or something.
Oh, okay, I see.
And they like battle each other with like foam swords. It's really weird. And if you've ever done it, it's actually kind of fun. But in our case, we wanted the little kids to come in and feel like they're playing a video game, like they're in a video game.
So make it more like interactive and more like a gamification of learning, but in real life, not necessarily just digital.
That's exactly right. The whole idea was, I said, look, here's a random Japanese kid. This kid has memorized 500 Pokemon names. No one made him do that. He doesn't sit down and study the Pokemon. He just knows them because he loves the game.
Yeah.
I was like, how can we make English that? Instead of us pushing English on the kids are pulling it. And so we made, it's basically like a gym. It's like a gym. You go to it every single day for 100 minutes and you sit down, you play this game, this gamified learning experience. And our kids are really, really like, because they spend 100 minutes up to 5 days a week in the classroom. Well, we don't even really call it, it's more of an experience. And where the teachers, there's 3 teachers in this giant space. The teachers are more like referees than they are like standing in front of the room and instructing. And so the kids, I knew that we had a successful product when I saw 2 kids, because it's a no Japanese environment. It's 100% English, you can't speak Japanese. When I saw 2 kids fight each other, like verbally argue with each other in English, in English Quest. And I was just like, this will work. This is going to work. So we opened English Quest, I think 10 years ago.
But I'm curious, like if you roll back a little bit, so you have this awesome idea to create English Quest as a kind of gamification of English, and you want to open this language school. What are like some of the steps you have to go through where you want to find a space, or in terms of regulation? I imagine that maybe government agencies have specific ideas of what education should look like or what should be taught at an English language school. How did you manage to set this all up?
Let me just give you a guide to how to make an Eikaiwa school. So step 1, you need to have some money because basically, if you open a school in Japan, it's going to take years to get a full roster. You're not going to start off with you'll have like 1 in your first month, maybe 2 or something like that, unless you've already networked people and then open a school.
Yeah.
But if you start from scratch and you don't know anybody, it's going to take time. So you need to start with money. In my case, I come from a very poor background. I mean, you can imagine, single mom with 7 kids. It's not, we didn't have money. So what actually I did, and if you're watching this, love, one of the guys that was with me on the JET program actually went back to America after the JET program and became a pretty successful banker. And I wrote him an email one day. I was like, I'm not going to name drop him, but I wrote him an email one day and I was like, hey, I got this crazy idea to do this thing in Japan. I was like, I'll do it. You fund it. And you can get a cut or whatever. And the great thing about him is like, he's such a lovely person. He's like, I just love the idea of funding a startup in Japan. You can have the money. I don't even need it back. And he's just like, it wasn't a ton of money. It was enough
for you to get started.
Enough to get started. And
whoever you are, thank you very much.
Dude, he's amazing. We can talk about the specifics of him later, but he's amazing. And so he gave me a little bit of nest money. And then all the regulations, as far as like government regulation goes, there is no regulation for an Eikaiwa school. There's no rules. There's nothing. Like in Japanese education, if you go to a hoikuen, which is what in English, preschool?
Yeah, preschool.
Preschool. They have like rules and regulations for every baby that's in the room. You need X amount of hoikushi, preschool teachers, licensed teachers. And so that's incredibly and they can only work for certain hours. They have to take a certain amount of breaks. There has to be a certain amount of square meters per baby. There's crazy rules. For Yochien, which is kindergarten, there's a lot of rules. For normal schools, there's a lot of rules. But what Eikaiwa school is it's this thing that's outside of the core education that's managed by the Ministry of Education in Japan. It's like this private club activity thing.
So it's like a private business.
It's a private business.
You're free to do what you want.
You can do whatever you want. I mean, as long as it's not illegal.
Yes, of course.
And so there's no rules, no regulations, and the thing is, it's kind of a gray zone. Like you're not actually azukari. You're not actually allowed to like take the kids and watch them, because then you're offering a child care service. Okay. So what you do is you say, all right, moms, we'll teach the kids, but you need to stay here. And so like they wait in the lobby or they hang out and whatever they do. And so like you do that. Now in our case, like we eventually got big enough that we actually have licensed people on site, so it's fine. But if you're just starting off by yourself, just hey mom, stick around, be within an earshot, and so that just avoids all that. Then you need to rent a place. That was actually the biggest hurdle that I faced, because I made my Eikaiwa school right after, they call it Lehman shock in Japan, but it was the global recession of 2007, 2008. And so real estate, they bulldozed a bunch of buildings in Japan because they got empty because people weren't renting. And if you have a building in Japan, you have to pay taxes on it. And so a lot of places down in Kagoshima just got bulldozed and they became parking lots because you don't get taxed for that.
Yeah.
And so space was at a premium. But that, more so than that, the biggest problem that we faced was that I'm foreign. And maybe it's different in bigger cities, but where I was, the landlord had never even seen a foreign person.
Yeah, so for him, it was really like, am I going to trust that person to do something with the space?
More so than that, it's like, he said, your name doesn't fit in the boxes. You know, it's like...
Of the application form.
Of the application form. Like, it's that basic. You know, we're talking like, they didn't know what to do. We have a relationship with our local bank. You know, they're our primary financier now. But when I loaned money from them in Japan, that's how you build credits to loan and repay and loan and repay. When I first did that, I was basically the first foreign business owner that ever loaned anything from that bank. And so it took a year to get this tiny little loan that I didn't even need, but I got it to make a relationship with the bank. So that's how you do it. You just keep doing that until you get to a big enough sum that you actually do want it. Anyway, and so like this is the biggest hurdle for me, was that all these organizations that had just never dealt with a foreign person before. And so obviously my Japanese, I call her fukushacho in Japanese, which means VP. But the way that our company is set up, there's actually no president or vice president. It's a Goldo Gaisho, which is like a LLC, limited liability company, not corporation, but company. And so we're both yakuin, whatever. But so in our case, like she helped with everything, but everything's in my name. And so like it was just a nightmare. Now it's totally streamlined. Like a lot of banks and institutions are globalized in Japan, so it's a lot easier now. But at that point, it was the hardest thing to do, is find some place that would lend to us, rent to us, I should say. I mean, when we got our space, though, it was like just put your nose to the grindstone and work. I mean, it was like 10 years I didn't look up. I just worked my butt off. And now I can't say this officially because there's no official numbers on it, but based upon my understanding, we are the largest Eikaiwa school or English school in the south of Kyushu.
So that's a pretty big school now.
We have over 300 students. And so it's big, it's fun, it's a lot of everyday management. I don't teach. I taught in the beginning. I did everything in the beginning. Like my business partner, let's call it that. My business partner, she did all the Japanese stuff and I did all the education stuff. So she handled all the paperwork that I didn't want to do, and I handled all the education. My business partner doesn't speak English.
Okay.
She only speaks Japanese. So it's like, it was interesting. But anyway, years later, I think, how many teachers do I have? I think I have 12 teachers now or something. I can't remember. And then anyway, so yeah, that's what we did. We just made a school, and I've been just doing that.
How about your education model? So it's kind of something new and unique. How was the reception from like parents, for example, when they first saw, oh, he's gonna teach something in a game way and not the traditional, get them to learn a list of vocabulary and just repeat after me? And
that's a very good question. Actually, in the beginning, so a lot of, especially where I am, because it's kind of more of a local area, it's not very global, like, Osaka or something. The moms are like, do you do Eiken, which is like the English test that is administered by a Japanese organization here in Japan. They're like, do you help them study for their classes and things like that? Like their rote memorization model, they wanted like to be like cram school of that. And I was like, no, we don't do any of that, because I don't want to teach for a test, because that's bull.
Yeah.
And I don't want to teach that and then have the kid go to because I have now, like, because I'm involved in different business dealings and everything, I go to conventions, and even one of my co-hosts on my podcast, Alex, he talks about this as well. You go to like conventions where you see different groups of different country people, and they all hang out. Like, I mean, myself and you come from different countries, and you and I will have no problem sitting down, having a beer, having a conversation, having a coffee, something like that. You go to an international business, conference, and you'll see all the international people talking to each other, and a group of Japanese businessmen sat in the corner talking to each other because they don't speak English. And so when you teach the test, you make a kid who can maybe figure out the puzzle on the paper, but when it gets to like sit down and actually talk to somebody, he can't.
Yeah, it's a typical experience of, you see a Japanese person studying vocabulary on a train, English vocabulary on a train. You turn to them and you're like, hi, how are you? And they just blank.
Are you studying English? sumimasen, eigo muri desu. You're like, okay, well what are you doing? Like, what are you wasting your time on?
And the vocabulary is like quintessential or some very complex word that even
we don't use. Yeah. And it's like, that is exactly what I'm talking about. And so I didn't want to make a newer generation of that. And so in the beginning, the moms were kind of like, what are you doing? What do you mean you don't teach the test? And two very lucky things happened. Actually, when I opened my Eikaiwa school, I didn't actually open a children's Eikaiwa school. I opened an adult Eikaiwa school because I didn't want to deal with, I have a background teaching. I used to teach high school a little bit when I was as a substitute teacher in America and stuff like that. And like dealing with little kids is a lot of work.
It is.
And so I wanted to deal with adults. And so I opened a school for just adults, and that was fine. It was in a very, actually the name of the building is Stylishu. So it was like a stylish area.
Typical Japanese building name.
Typical Japanese building name. And so like, it was really cool. Everything was like porcelain and very clean. And then I remember this mother had called like very persistently, many times. And she's like, just let my daughter in for like at an earlier time before all the adult students show up, blah, blah, blah. I just want my daughter to learn from him. And the reason why is because her daughter went to international school. And so she knew the importance of like native teaching and like teaching differently from the Japanese curriculum.
Yeah, just like using the language.
Using the language. I mean, duh, right? And so the mom couldn't get that from other Eikaiwa schools. So she just begged and begged and begged. It took like 6, and she just wouldn't go away. And so we're like, fine, I'll meet your daughter. Like, bring her in one day. And so I brought her in, and she was this lovely, incredibly smart, like just focused and like, I don't know. She was just, you could just tell that this girl was going to be amazing. And I was just like, I can't turn this girl away. And I was just like, all right, fine. I'll teach you privately. And like, we'll just keep it a secret. Like one non-adult student.
Non-adult, that's it.
One kid. And I think it was, so at that point, the ratio was like however many adult students to that one kid. And then a year and a half later, it was like 3/4 kids and 1/4 adults.
They just took over.
They took over.
They won the game.
They won the game. Yeah, they got their way.
Yeah.
And then that got us up to about, I don't know, over 100 students. Then when I opened English Quest, there were 2 moms, and I didn't know this at the time, but there were 2 moms in the community that were like rock star moms with like model students. One of them was that first girl. That's why all the kids came in, because they looked at her and like, where is she going to Eikaiwa school? And so I didn't know that at the time, but I thought it was like, I don't want to say an act of charity, but like an act of goodwill. But it turned out to like pay off in like tenfold. And then so I didn't know that when I signed her up, but that happened. And then there was another mom who had these 2 rock star twins, and you know who you are. And she was the first sign up for English class when we opened, because like the other moms were like, what is this? And it's not cheap. It's not cheap. So the other moms were like, what's this? And that mom had 2 fluent, because they went to international school as well, had 2 fluent kids, and she put them in English class day 1. So all the other moms were like looking at them, and they're like, what is that? What's this English Quest? Tell me more about this. And so by a year after opening English Quest, we had a waiting list for it for it went out like 2 years. So incredibly popular program. It's still very popular.
So now you need more and more teachers to come.
Actually, what we want to do is we want to expand. The next step is going to Fukuoka for us. And so the biggest problem to expansion has been when I'm working locally, it's fine. Once I tell a bank or an institution like, hey, we want to expand outside of the prefecture, they're all against it, because there's this like, I don't want to call it petty, but it's kind of petty. There's like this petty like regional rivalry amongst.
They want to be the bank that supports this business in this prefecture, and they don't want to be
and they don't want us to leave, right? And so they don't want to lose control.
So now you have to deal with politics, basically.
Right. And so if this was like a good selling idea in a different country, you just get VC capital and just test the idea in different markets and find your market saturation. But that's really difficult here, because it's not. I mean, there is some VC, especially now that the yen is weak. A lot of foreign investment firms are investing in Japan. So now is probably the best time to expand. But so our next step is Fukuoka, and we hope to do that within the next year or so. But I forgot to mention this, but as we were making the Eikaiwa school, a lot of what we do for education and stuff is we do the reverse classroom model that was kind of like popularized by Khan Academy, where you learn the information from a video, but then class time is spent doing homework. Because like, what's the point of learning from the teacher that you can replace with a video, and then send you home with homework that you then have to do all these challenging, questions, and there's no one there to help you.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. So Khan Academy, he's like, let's flip the classroom on its head. The kids will watch videos at home. So they'll learn the stuff that they need to know at home. And when they come to the classroom, then they'll do their homework in the classroom. And so our program doesn't have homework, but what we do is like, instead of wasting the teacher's time teaching something, all the students learn at their own pace. They're all different levels and they're all mixed together. That's very not Japanese. Japanese, they put everybody in the same level. Everybody's like got to go at the same pace. Everybody's like completely different. So if there's like a really fast kid, he's fast. If there's a really, really slow kid, he's slow. It doesn't matter. And we teach for mastery, just like Khan Academy. So if they don't pass all the questions on some sort of challenging test or something like that, then they can't go up to the next level. It's like playing a video game. If you can't beat this boss, you go to the next level. Anyway, so what we do is we sit them down with like a video lecture that teaches them the information that they need to know. And then they test that knowledge on what we call a challenge. And it could be like something similar looking like homework, like a worksheet or something like that. And then if they don't get it, then the teacher will kind of like nudge them in the right direction, have them watch the video again, something like that. Maybe the older kids can help the younger kids. That's another thing that we really incorporated in English class, is that the students really learn from other students. Because again, going back to the Pokemon model, bigger brother is into Pokemon, little brother, I'm using a bunch of male pronouns here, but whatever, you know what I'm saying. So the older sibling is into Pokemon, the younger sibling looks at the older sibling, goes, nah, like I want to do that. And then they learn from them. So we wanted that to be an English class. So that's like, so there's like, they get points for helping out younger kids. Anyway, so as we were making these videos, like, cause I have like I said, I went to university for everything. And so I have a graphic design background. I do video production. Like I basically do everything. And so we were making videos, and then I'm a radio personality, and I also used to be a television personality in Kagoshima. And so the TV station that I was working for, they were like, hey, can you edit some stuff that's like foreign facing for like, international global market? And I was like, sure. And so I edited some things for them, and the invoice that I'd give them was like my Kaiwa school's like invoice. And I was like, this is weird. I was like, we have all this video equipment. We have a 360 green screen studio that we built by hand. And I was like, why don't we just offshoot to a Kogaisha, like a, what would you call it? A subsidiary, like smaller little brother company that does production. And then that's how I got a production company.
So let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
You mentioned that you were a TV personality in Kagoshima. So I imagine your school has been kind of really a centerpiece of the Kagoshima community for Eikaiwa and English teaching. But how did it get to like go on TV and having a radio show?
So, like I said, because everybody knows everybody in Kagoshima, I got approached one day. This is so random. I got approached one day by one of my friends who is a director for TV programming. And because like we're such good friends, she just never thought about putting me on TV because we're friends. It's like, I don't put my friends on TV kind of thing. And one day she came up to me and she's like, do you know any Italians who speak Japanese? Because we're doing a
very specific question.
Yeah. And I was like, there actually was one guy who's an Italian in Kagoshima who could speak a little bit of Japanese. And so she contacted him and then came back saying, actually his Japanese isn't good enough or whatever it was. I forgot what it was. And she's like, you know what, Mitch? Do you like American food? And I was like, no. She's like, excellent. I'm going to put you in a corner for TV. And I was like, oh, man. And so it was like, I was going to be on TV for like, I don't know, 10 minutes or something. And so I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, what can I do? Because I'm kind of annoyed with her at this point because I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to do this. And I don't want to eat American food. And
Define American food, hamburgers and...
Yeah, like cheeseburgers, the typical, like, I mean, like, I like cheeseburgers and everything, but come on, it's like Japanese American food. It's just kind of like... Anyway, so what I did, and I still have this video actually, is I showed up and I was just... I don't know how to explain how I was feeling. I wanted to make fun of what I was doing. Like I didn't want to
turn it into comedy.
Turn it into comedy and also make it more fun for the people who are watching, but also like just make it into like a joke that I could then keep like as a memory of being on TV. And so
when you're 50, you're like, this was me on TV.
Yeah, right. Like maybe show the kids or something. And so I show up, and because it's all about America, and I could care. I'm not anti-American, but I don't consider myself like we have a Christmas party at the Eikaiwa school every year. It's like a wedding-sized Christmas party, and the menu, I have to ask my like American friends. I'm like, what do you guys eat for Christmas? Because my house wasn't like that. My house is like I said, my mom took over. It was all Japanese by the time like I can remember. Anyway, so like I show up to set, and I have an American flag on as a cape. and I'm like, and I have stupid American sunglasses on, and I show up and I'm just like speaking to them like really verbose, like very like loud English. And they were just like, what is this? And then after I did like a 8-minute, well, it took all day, but like an 8-minute video, they're like, can you come to the studio and present your video live on TV? And I was like, I don't want to do that. Cause like that was.
Was this all in English or in Japanese?
No, this is all in Japanese. I only did like the first like 2 seconds in English and after it's all Japanese. And I have never really liked to publicly speak in Japanese. Like, cause my mom always used to like tease me about my Japanese cause her Japanese obviously is just native. And so she'd pick on my Japanese, like, we don't say that, ha, 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 ha. So it always like gave me this like complex about like, speaking publicly in Japanese. And so when they were like, come on live TV and speak Japanese and introduce your video, which they call it BTR. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But I have this thing inside that if I really don't want to do something, I force myself to do it. If I feel like it's going to improve me as a person. And so I was thinking, no. But then I said yes. And so I went, and I did the TV show, and I showed up in the stupid American
every time,
just that time, and I had like little American hand flags I handed out to the people on set, and it was so stupid. And at the end of it, the producer, his job is to figure out the numbers, right? He's there, he's the money guy. He like pulls me off camera, and he's like, "Hey, can we sit down? Can we talk?" He's like, "I want you to be a regular on TV." I was like, "I have a job. Like, I don't need to be on TV. Like, I don't want to do that." And he's like, no, he's like, I swear to God, it'll only be on Mondays. It'll be super easy. You can easily fit this into your schedule. And I was like, and again, I was thinking, no, because that was like, I don't want to be, because it's a morning TV show as well.
And then obviously you said yes.
And so I said yes. And then, and so in that only Monday morning part was a lie. Because what happened is like, there was a couple, they get ratings for every TV show, right? And so they know how many people are watching. And so they quickly learned that when I was on TV, their ratings were like double or triple than what it usually was. Because it's weird. Like,
so what were the shows about?
It's they call it Joho Bangami, which is like an information TV, but it's really just like, it's one, you know how variety TV, they go out, they eat something, they go, oh my God, this is so good. It's like that, but toned down a little bit. But since it was in the mornings, all the housewives were watching, and probably grandmas and housewives. And so if you think about it, if you're a housewife and you're going through the channels and you see like a bunch of generic looking, just normal Japanese reporters off doing normal Japanese stuff, that's not as interesting as this, speaking, the local dialect of Japanese, doing things, and like, they tortured me. To be honest, they tortured me. They made me do everything that smelled bad, that made me hurt, put me out. And like, the one thing that they made me do, there's like katsuobushi is like this hardened fish that you make into flakes.
Exactly.
And they smoke it in this giant room. And they
smoked you.
They made me run around and set fire to all these little things in this small room, and it filled with.
Is there still footage of this somewhere?
Probably somewhere. It's
I'll have to look the YouTube archives.
They tortured. It's not on YouTube, but I have copies of everything. But they tortured me, and it made me learn a lot. That's for sure. They sent me to every farm. They sent me to the war museum. They're like, here, this will be fun. I'm like, you guys are insane. And so I was on TV all the time, and then so after the first year, I tried to quit TV. And in Japanese, you say, yami sasete kudasai, it's like, please allow me to quit. And they were like, no, because they like the numbers. And oh my God, it required the television show to get canceled for me to not be on TV anymore. That's what ended up happening. Is that after?
So the show, the producer stopped the show, or
the station stopped the show, right before COVID too. And I was just like, they were like, we're going to transfer you to a new TV show, but my contract was this show. And I was like, no, because I don't want to be on TV anymore. It was fun, but it was exhausting. Like, I would wake up at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning to get on set. It was just exhausting.
Because there's a lot of travel time to the location, whatever makeup you need to do.
So I do like the location shot. It's like an all day shoot. They edit it. And then I get called back in for a live presentation of it on the show. And so like I go, all right, this is the video that we're gonna look at, blah, 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 BTR, dozo. And then we like watch the video, and then they do the typical Japanese thing where they do waipu, which is like face in the corner. And then
what's this all about?
I don't know. It's just like, it's like showing the people how they should be reacting to this part of the video. It's so weird. And then anyways, after that, it comes back to the station, and then I have to talk to them for like another 10 or 15 minutes or something like that. They made me like announce the weather sometimes. That was always fun.
You really became the face of Kagoshima, as the international face of Kagoshima during that period of time.
And what happened was another local station saw what my station was doing, and they brought out a girl who used to live in Tokyo and who could speak Japanese, and they brought her out. She's like this blonde hair Caucasian girl. And so they brought her out to be on their TV station. And I was just like, I gotta stop doing this. But anyway, as one of the cool things that happened, like while I was on TV, I had a lot of downtime. And so while we were like sitting there and like they're setting up the cameras or they're doing whatever, I would talk to all the cameramen and the tech people. And I was like, what is this? What is this for? What are you doing with this? Why are you doing this? And I learned how to produce TV. And I actually my company, Story Studios, we actually do TV commercials now. We do TV commercials. You talked about our podcast, Small Talk Japan, which we do a weekly news-ish show, locker room talk news show. And we do prefectural, promotional work and just tons of stuff, tons and stuff. And so like, I guess I learned a lot of that from just being on TV. So that was cool.
Well, in the end, it makes for a lot of stories to share and a lot of learning about the technical side of things.
It was good. I wouldn't do it again, but maybe I would do it again. But it definitely added to my levels of stress. And then another good thing about being on TV is that our TV station has a sister radio station. And one of the sponsors of the radio station saw me on TV, and he's like, I want that dude to lead my radio show. And so this guy, he runs he's basically, what would you call him? Like a regional director for a bunch of schools. And when he was in Tokyo he went to Tokyo University. When he went to university in Tokyo in the 70s, there was a radio station that was run by probably sailors or American GI or something like that. And it was all in English, and they would just, since the Japanese people couldn't understand what they were saying, they were just like dropping all the bad words. And they were just like completely freely saying whatever they want because there's no regulation at that time. And so he always wanted something like that in Kagoshima. And so he made a 1-hour radio show. Obviously we can't cuss and say it's filtered because they made a law, I don't remember when, but basically radio programs can't be 100% in English in Japan.
It's not allowed.
It can't, or a foreign language. It has to be some mixture of Japanese in the show. And so we do an English Japanese mixed variety show, and I've been doing that for almost a decade.
So this is still ongoing.
This is still ongoing because radio is easy. Radio is easy. You show up, you can be hungover, you can be in your short pants, and you just like sit in front of the mic and talk. It's easy. TV is hard. TV is really, really hard. There's a lot more components. It takes a lot longer to get shots. I mean, you've watched Japanese TV when they like show they like bring out food and then like they show like a super close up of like the steaming food. That takes an hour to shoot, and that's separate. And so you're sitting there waiting for the van to leave while they're doing all those they call it insato. It's like the B-roll. Yeah, but even then, like I was learning how to do that, like how to like mask cuts with like a long shot and stuff like that. That's where I learned all that stuff of being on TV.
What are some of the things that really surprised you where you grew up watching American TV and now you are actually behind the scenes on Japanese TV and looking at those? You were just mentioning those kind of reaction windows, and what are some of the things that were asked of you where you're like, I really have to do this now? Is this part of...
Yeah, I mean, like I'm trying not to get negative here, but they did ask me to go to the Kamikaze Museum, and I was like, "You what?" I was like, "Are you crazy?"
So like a lack of maybe cultural sensitivity.
No, actually, it was the exact opposite. When they asked me to go there, I went there, and the reason why they asked me to go there, this is we call it an English Surrender Day. It's like the day that Japan surrendered after the war.
Okay.
And every year all the stations send out camera people to this museum that like explains because a lot of those pilots came from that region, and so like it explains what was going through the leadership's mind, and they have oh my god, it makes you cry, letters from the kids that got sent, and when they told me, because I'm a local business owner, right? I have an image to protect, and so they're like, we want you to go to the war museum. I was like, no. But then the director, she explained it to me, this wonderful, wonderful woman. She explained it to me. She's like, every year, this is back when tensions between Japan and North Korea were kind of heating up. And she's like, every single year we send a Japanese reporter, and they just go there and they say the exact generic things. And if you're watching that TV show, you're watching that corner in the TV show, it's like, no, there's no impact. No one thinks about it at all. And they're like, you're mixed. You're a quarter Japanese. Your grandma's Japanese. you go there, you're gonna have a different reaction, and we want that. We want to film that. We want to put that on TV so that there's a bigger impact to the young generation that maybe doesn't understand the horrors of war, is what this woman said.
So not cultural insensitivity, but actually trying to get people to be more aware of those differences.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
And so when she said it to me, I was like, oh man, no.
You can't say no.
Yeah, she said young people. She's like, peace, future. And I was like, oh, the words that I like. Now I have to go. Oh, no, my God. I'd never cried so much in a TV, video before. I was just like, that was hard. That was really, really hard to see. And then also I got to meet one of the guys. I think he's passed actually, but he was about to be sent the day before he was to be sent as one of the pilots. The war ended. And so I was talking to this 80-some-year-old, and like, I say talking. He was talking the things he wanted to say at me. I mean, like, he's hard as nails, and he's old, so he's just like, listen, I'm gonna tell you, son. But that was really crazy to meet someone from that era, and like, it changed my perspective on a lot of things. That's what TV. I should say that's what TV did for me. Is it changed the way that I thought about a lot of things, because I got to meet the local people in their element, see what they. Have you ever seen the TV show Dirty Jobs?
I don't think so, no.
It's an American TV show where this guy, he goes and like hangs out with people who do like hard blue collar jobs. And so I don't want to say that I did that, but I did something similar to that. And so I got to learn a lot about the local people, and it really expanded my understanding of the area. So it was really good for me. And obviously it wasn't bad for, recruitment for the Eikaiwa school, because there was like, oh, I want to go to the Eikaiwa school where that guy's on TV. And so it was win-win, I guess.
But all in all, it also led to the start of you starting your creative company.
My production company.
Story Studios.
Story Studios with an I. I started with a guy named, his name is Josh. His real name is Yoshi, but his name, we call him Josh. And his last name is Morinaga. My last name is Stapleton. My Eikaiwa school is named Stapleton Eikaiwa. And so Story is Stapleton and Morinaga put together. So STORI, Story.
I see.
Story
That's
Studios.
where it comes from.
That's where it comes from.
So all the things you've learned while being on TV and on radio, now you can put into practice.
Yep.
So what kind of content do you produce, and what do you produce it for?
So Story Studios does we have a lot of different income streams, from anywhere from just an edit job where they just send you the data and like, we want you to edit this, to we do prefectural and city sponsored promotional things. One of our YouTube channels is called People of Kagoshima. It's inspired by Humans of New York.
Oh yeah, the famous Facebook
photographer
turned into
Instagrammer, YouTuber, and everything. Now, obviously, Humans of New York works because people in New York are like New Yorkers, and they will tell you what they want to say. Japanese people are very shy, and you can't really produce exactly the same content. So what we did is more like a short documentary where we come in, we sit down with people who are doing interesting things, we interview them, and then we shoot whatever they've talked about. And so it's very highbrow, it's very well produced. And we're on our third season of it, and that's funded by the prefecture. And that's, I guess you could say that we want people to come to visit the region and experience the local culture. That's the goal, but it's also, that's the main goal. But the sub goal is to preserve these people's lives. Like a couple of the people that we've interviewed have been, very senior citizens, and so we're archiving their story, their interviews. And so it's just been a wonderful project to be involved with, and it's ongoing. So that's People of Kagoshima. Another thing that we do is we do television commercials, anything. Like if you come, because we have a foreign kind of sensibility about things, and so it's not really very Japanesey. It's more like foreign. And so companies that want to produce commercials in a kind of interesting way that's not the typical Japanese way, they'll come to us.
So you do both, basically publicly funded work by the government, but also
private stuff. Yeah. I'd say right now our income stream is mostly private. One of the things that we have recently done because of our work doing our podcast is that a lot of people have come up to us we want to produce a podcast for our company. And so we're and instead of buying a bunch of stuff for a podcast, they just, have a certain rate that they, kind of rent the studio, come in, sit down, we do the editing and all that stuff. And manage their YouTube channels. And so that's been a pretty big, booming area for us.
So private companies are reaching out to build YouTube channels for them, and especially podcasts.
Yeah, especially podcasts, because podcasts are just now really, it's the golden age of audio in the West. But podcasts are just now becoming a thing in Japan. And it's really weird because how many hours do the typical Japanese people commute on a train? with their their AirPods in. And so for me, it's all like, I think that more, especially because what we produce is the podcast space is, aside from our own private podcast, is Japanese. So it's Japanese facing. And so I think more of that should happen in Japan because there's a lot of interesting people that make a lot of interesting podcasts. This podcast, actually, when you reached out to me, I hadn't heard about this podcast yet at that time. When you reached out to me, I obviously researched you guys, looked at a bunch of back episodes, and like this is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. It's really. I mean, you guys do a very good job. You had really interesting interviews for your podcast.
We do our best to find more and more interesting people and people like you willing to come all the way across Japan.
I love Osaka, but that's the thing. That's the thing is like you guys can do that because you're in Osaka. It's easier to attract different interviews. I would love to do an interview style podcast, but where I am, it would have to be in Japanese. You couldn't do it in English. There's just not enough English speakers.
Yeah, but even in Osaka, for example, we were trying to look for people in and around Osaka, and there are a lot of people, but then you still need to find people that are willing to come on a podcast and to share their experience in a language in English, which may not be their native language. So I can imagine Kagoshima.
Well, I mean, you're saying that, but English, you speak 4 languages and you're doing an interview podcast. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm lucky to do so.
I do English and Japanese, and like, I remember one time I went to Korea and this lady started speaking to me in Korean, and I just responded in Japanese because I have my native language and my non-native language, which is Japanese. I only have that. That's like, I can't imagine balancing 4 languages. That's crazy.
How is it though for the podcast you do in Japanese? I'm curious. What do the companies expect from you in terms of production, in terms of topics, and what is their objective?
So most of them come to us with no idea what they want to do. They're just like, we want a media presence. And a lot of the reasons for getting on YouTube or whatever is for recruitment for larger companies. They want to attract, top talent. And one of the really easy ways to do that is to have a very visible media presence. So people can look a little bit inside the company, see the people who are involved in that company, and kind of get a sense of like what the corporate values are for that company. And so they don't know that that's what they want, but they kind of come to us with this general sense of what they want to do. And then we kind of like guide them to a solution to what they want to do. For example, I'm not going to drop any of my clients' names, but one of the podcasts that we produce is a national brand of, it sounds really strange, but of nursing homes.
Okay, so a chain of nursing homes, basically.
Chain of nursing homes. But the CEO is a very kind of like forward-thinking individual. And he has some very interesting ideas about how like the elderly, how they can live happy and healthy lives. And so it's not just like put grandma in a home. It's like, let's have grandma have an amazing life outside of, because like, in Japan, one of the big problems that they have is that elderly people don't want to leave their home. They're fiercely independent.
That's not only Japan. I mean, I think about my grandma. She did not want to leave her home, and she stayed there until shortly before she passed at like 95.
Really?
It was impossible to get out. We had to get someone to live with her because
a caretaker.
Yeah, we couldn't get out. So I don't think it's only in Japan, but
I think it happens everywhere. But I think the Japanese, especially grandmas, who are basically, they're the bosses of the family.
Especially in Osaka.
Oh yeah, Ame-chan. Oh my God. But so they, especially if they outlive their husbands, they do not want to go anywhere. They are fine. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of myself. And so it's not about like putting grandma in a home. It's more like, and then another thing that this company does is like day service, where grandma will live in her house, but she'll go and hang out for the day.
Yeah.
And so that's the philosophy of this company, is more like, it's more like a hangout place for elderly people. And so it's kind of like, if you think about, there's whole villages in Florida where they have retirement villages where everybody there's a senior citizen. They golf, they swim, they go to yoga, that kind of stuff. And so he's kind of inspired by that and is kind of making a Japanese version of that. But one of the things that he wants to do with the podcast is really talk about how to treat elderly people with respect and dignity. And so he talks about a lot of, and also how technology can make the lives of older people a lot better.
That's super interesting. We had a guest on the podcast a few months already ago, who works in the video game industry. And among others, what they're doing is they're bringing video games into elderly homes because it's been shown by some studies that getting elderly people to interact and to play games it keeps their mental kind of
using the brain.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're also doing these kind of things, and that lines up exactly with what you're saying.
And so that he's like one of the, so you know that some traditional Japanese companies, they're stuck in their ways and they don't want to change, especially if the shacho at the top is like old, and he's like, no, we're not changing anything until I die, you know.
Yeah.
And this company CEO, he's very, very, very modern, very forward thinking, and so his big thing is like, I want to get these fresh ideas out there for any care workers out there. And of course, like there's also the added benefit that it does work for recruitment for him and things like that. But if you're like a care worker, there's tons of care workers across the country in Japan. He's like, if you're a care worker and you face daily challenges in your job, if you watch our podcast, I want you to feel like you're not alone, and also feel like, you know, we can give you some helpful information.
That's interesting, right? It leads to the point of podcasts now becoming not only just radio shows that you can just download, but more communities for specific around
very
specific,
niche.
Exactly.
I mean, so our podcast, Small Talk Japan, we are very niche. I mean, we have like a very dedicated listener group. Our YouTube channel is actually not as popular as the audio version, for whatever reason. But the people who like our patrons and stuff like that, they're just super cool about it. And like they come to Japan, we hang out with them. They're just like people who are just super interested in like real authentic Japanese like life. And the way that we do our podcast in particular is like, we're very like, I always envision my podcast, the Small Talk Japan podcast, being like if ALT Mitch had something to weekly download and listen to or watch about Japanese life that could be relatable. You know, like that kind of like foreign kind of view on Japan, but I'm not so foreign that I'm not completely removed from the
kind of a small community that gives you maybe a sense of belonging, where if you're a jet somewhere in the countryside, in the only cold place in the south of Japan, and you're thinking about, I want to get in touch with people, interact with people, and you have this group, they're talking about the same thing that I'm thinking about. There you have kind of, you find your tribe in a way.
There you go, find your tribe. And so, and we also have a lot of people who, for example, used to be stationed in Japan or used to teach in Japan, and then they moved back to the States, and they're wondering like how things are now and things like that. And like, there's a lot of like personal stories. Me and the other hosts, we talk about ourselves a lot when they're daily happenings and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a personality / information podcast. But yeah, we do it. I did it just because, like I said, I wanted anybody out there who is like feeling cold and alone somewhere out there to have something that they could like tune into every week. We've been doing it since 2019. We have 215 episodes.
Yeah, since 4 years, running 4 years.
Well, we also get to test out new technology on it too.
Oh.
Before we give it to our clients, we like test it out on ourselves first. So if there's any problems or whatever, it's like we find it first.
That's convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. So it's cool.
So where do you see all of this going now into the future?
So I want to expand. So the Story Studios does, you know, its thing, and it also helps produce content for the Eikaiwa School. So we're constantly, I bought these puppets. I'm so weird. I bought these puppets that look like Sesame Street puppets. From California, from a puppet maker. Thanks, by the way. He was really good. 2 puppets, and they were not cheap, and they took a long time to make. But we make like children-facing YouTube videos and stuff like that, like English education and stuff like that.
Oh, so you have like, you create your characters and you do like a puppet show.
Yeah, and like our teachers premiere. It's kind of like Sesame Street, but for Japanese kids. And then, but apparently we're super popular in Nagoya, which is weird.
Of all places.
Of all places. It's very strange. But we use those in the classroom as well. And so those videos we're going to continue to produce, and as well as whatever else we, you know, are asked to produce in that space. And then for the Eikaiwa School, that's really the production company is fun. It's super fun because we do the weirdest things. They're like, go to this one weird place and film this one weird thing. Like the other day, I dug a onsen foot bath on a volcano.
So you like a new onsen kind of.
You like
started.
You go to the beach on a volcano. You dig a hole and it fills with hot water from below.
That's so cool.
And you put your feet in it. Now that's really cool in the winter. It was the middle of summer, so it's really hot. But we filmed that. Like, it's just so random, the stuff that we're doing. And so that's always fun. It's a fun distraction. But my main thing is doing the Eikaiwa School and really trying to make that into a franchisable. I don't want to franchise it, but I want to make it so like established that it is franchisable should I want to, and then stamp out more and more locations, because I think that that's a really competitive product. That I think that and there's a lot of market saturation, but a lot of market saturation of the same thing. It's like when Starbucks came, there was a lot of cafes out there. But nobody was doing what Starbucks was doing, which was one, charging a ridiculous amount of money for a cup of coffee, but also two, having a very like tight-knit ecosystem of coffee that no matter where you go, you get the same exact coffee. Starbucks really started that. I don't really like Starbucks coffee, but they started that.
Yeah.
And so once they got into that, they took off. They made a lot of money. The story of Starbucks is actually really interesting. And they made a third place. That's the big thing that Starbucks did is they made a third place. So before, it was your house, your work, and your church. Or your temple or your shrine or whatever. Now that people are not so religious anymore, the church community is kind of gone. So that third place, for me, could be a bar, I guess. But house, work, and some third space. So that third space for Starbucks is the cafe. For us in our community, in our Eikaiwa school, the third space is us. So they go to work, they go to school, they go to school, they go to home, they come to us.
So it's more like also community.
Very, very big community. And that's something that we do really well. Like I said, we do a Christmas party every year, 150 people. Santa shows up. Kids love it. It's like a wedding production. We have video and all this other crazy stuff that it's just great. And so we do that every single year. And so all the families get their photos with Santa. It's like a family thing, and so we do summer camp, which is like tons of kids and they get their memories. And so we are this kind of like facilitating third space. And during one of the things that we really saw this was during COVID. During we didn't really have like hard lockdowns in Japan, but like kind of, they shut the schools.
Yeah, there were quite a lot of, at the time I was studying Japanese as well at language school, and suddenly, first the school actually closed for quite a few months. And then we had a lot of limitations with like wearing these face shields plus plastic barrier plus this, which goes all against education and interaction.
Yeah, and so we did our personal protective equipment, all that other stuff. But one of the things that really struck me during COVID was that the moms wanted access to accurate information about the pandemic. Because the Japanese news sources at the time, and especially in the first year, they weren't wrong, but they were very cautious and they weren't as informed as they should have been. Like I've been on TV, I know how the producers choose what goes on air. And so the things that they were, NHK and things like that, that they were airing was very, very safe. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, they were a little bit also slow to update things.
And also focusing on weird things like especially where we were, in larger cities, there's lots of cases of COVID. Where we were, it was like months before we got our first case. And then when they got their first case, that's anything that anybody could talk about. It was just strange. And so since we're a centralized place that has students from all over the city from different schools, we were getting information from everywhere. And so we were basically a counseling space for the moms to come in and we tell them, this is what's happening at this school. This is what's happening at this school. Like when one of their kids got COVID, for example, they're like, oh my God, it's only my kid. It's the end of the world. We're like, no.
Because you get all the kids from the different public schools and then.
At the same space. So we're like, no, actually, there's a lot of places that are getting COVID. They're just keeping it hush hush. And this is the situation, blah, blah, blah. It'll be fine. Just relax, take these measures. And so we were a information place. And also a lot of our students, because we're not cheap, a lot of our students' parents are doctors. And so we were getting like firsthand information from the front lines. And so like that was really cool that we were kind of like a hub for people to communicate. And so, like I said, we built this kind of like third space. And because they come every single day, the kids. And so we really are this community.
Instead of Juku, they go to a more kind of community-based, playful study environment.
Especially when they're younger. I mean, our English Quest program is from 4 up to, junior high school. But yeah, Juku,
we could talk about this for a long time, I think.
Do not like Juku, but But and the thing about Juku though is like the parents don't go, the kids go by themselves.
Yeah.
And so where we are, the parents come, they hang out with each other. It's just a different environment. And I think that it deserves to be, I think it's strange to say this, but I think that school design deserves to be in more places and be enjoyed by more people. It's kind of my thing.
And for you personally, how do you manage to keep on top of a school like this that you want to develop and expand, and a kind of education model that you believe in and that you want to spread, as well as a production company where you want to kind of help bring more eyes onto your local community, onto your local prefecture, and that's a lot of things to manage at once.
So I'll start off with saying that I'm really interested in a lot of different things. Obviously, in university, I didn't graduate because I just wanted to keep majoring in everything. So I'm interested in a lot of different things. I mean, I sat down here and I immediately started talking about the lenses and the cameras and the microphones. I'm very interested in a lot of different things. But for me, media and education are the same thing now, and they're never going to come apart. They're forever like married to each other. And so if you can tell a story using media, you can educate a kid using media. It's the exact same thing, because everything is stories. I mean, even math, when you teach math, I remember reading a book on geometry called Flatland, and it's just like this fictionalized universe, that talked about like lines, because like everything's 2D in this universe. And so when lines are walking around, they have to like wiggle like this so they don't run in and stab other, shapes and things like that. And so ever since I read that book, I thought, oh my God, you could tell stories about math and you can conceptualize what they're trying to teach you by using a story. So stories can teach you anything. I mean, that's how humans learned how to teach their young things. Like they would, like, the tribes would teach their young kids, like, about a tiger or a lion. And then the kids would learn those things are dangerous and we shouldn't go near them. They didn't have to get eaten by a lion themselves to understand that a lion is dangerous, because they had the stories. And so, and the reason why we're called Story Studios is because of our name, but also because any media company tells a story. Fish and Rice tells the story of the person who you're interviewing. Like everything's a story. And so those two things are very, very, like, they're basically the same thing. It's just like the technical side of it is a little bit different. But to answer your question, I guess, is like, I'm just really interested in this space, media and in education. And I just like pull in all this stuff. I'm really weird. Like if I get a free chance, I don't sit down and watch Netflix. Unless I'm like watching Netflix for like best practices on how Netflix produces something. I'm never watching something for the plot or something like that. I'll be watching podcasts or listening to podcasts or like reading books or listening to audiobooks on subject matter that I'm really into, which is education, media, and things like that.
So for you, basically, it's all one thing.
It never feels like work. It always feels like fun. And I've said this before, like people like, what do you get motivated by? Do you get motivated by, money? Do you get motivated by prestige and fame? I'm like, no, none of that stuff means anything to me. Like I'm wearing a $10 t-shirt. I do not care about stuff like that. But what I care about is making a difference. I like to see a kid who goes from like, 5 to going back to that first young girl that started all the kids in my school.
The one that you said she's going to be amazing?
She is amazing. She is currently 22 or something like that. And we actually, myself, her mother, and her and my business partner all went out, got a drink together, and she's doing amazing things. I think she is in Kansai, actually. Yeah.
Oh.
And so she's just doing amazing things.
She picked the right place.
Yeah, I love Kansai. But yeah.
Sorry for Kagoshima people, but
well, if you're really smart and you're young, I would suggest also not working in Kagoshima. You can come back afterwards, but when you're young, get to a big city and have fun. But yeah, she's doing great, and because like I taught her. I never stopped teaching her. She was my last student. Even though I was no longer a teacher, I employed teachers. I always elected to privately teach her. And so when she graduated high school, went to university, that was really cool. And when she came back after university, being a professional, I was just like, this is cool. Like, and that to me is more motivating than $1 million. Like you couldn't pay.
And that's a result of many years of dedication, right? Because you could only see her graduate from university because you went through those 12 years,
right?
15 years of
doing stupid things like, setting like, wood on fire to smoke fish in a giant room, and, but so it's very, very much so worth it to do that. And also like, I like to think like holistically about everything. Like, some people are very cynical. They're like, oh, he's only doing that because blah, 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 blah. I always try to like think of people's better angels and think holistically about everything. Like, so like our education, for example, there have been times where teachers have asked me, can I teach the ACAN test? Can I teach this? I'll be able to get more students if I do this. And I say, no, we're not doing that. Like we are first principles. Why are you teaching that test? So I can get more students. I don't care about that. I want you to make a difference on this kid's life, and that stupid test is not going to do it. And so it's like all of my staff know like I'd say rules, like these are the things that we need to live by. Unfortunately, Google has changed, but Google used to have like the do no evil tagline. And that's kind of like, that's actually listed on our contracts at the very like thing is like, don't do anything bad. Just always be cool and always think about the students first. And so we definitely have that. And so that motivates me. And so like, going forward, if we can grow, if we can impact more students' lives, and if we can get, more and more kids that are graduating, and like, because the world's a global place. This is never going away. You can't go back.
Hopefully not.
We're not gonna go back to, the country in chains period, where the isolation period of Japan. We're not going back to that. We're open for business. And so we either deal with it or you don't. And I would rather, and I think that Japanese people have a lot of really interesting things to say. And I wish that they had the voice to say it. That's all. I mean, Studio Ghibli, everybody knows about Studio Ghibli.
Just got acquired by...
got acquired.
Yeah, big TV.
But that's because, the founder is getting older. But still, their impact on the global, culture is huge. You look at, One Piece is being developed, is now a live action show from Netflix. The Mario movie that just went ballistically successful over the summer when it came out. Just all these different, IP that come from Japan. Japan has a lot of interesting things to say. And when the West runs out of ideas, and this is so typical, this has happened for 100 years. When the West runs out of ideas, they look to Asia and they steal ideas from Asia.
Yeah, very, very typical.
Yep.
So with all the experience that you've now had in Japan, and if one of our listeners is kind of thinking about getting into language teaching, opening a school, or working in media, what would be the kind of advice that you'd like to share with them?
I would suggest that smiling and staying positive, because it's going to be tough. There's going to be tough times. And like I said, the TV, they're like, go to the Kamikaze Museum. I'm like, what? There's going to be tough times. But if you smile and if you understand that, everyone's a person. Japanese people are people. They might have different culture or language or whatever, but they're still people. And everybody wants, to that kind of like human connection. And so if you're just real with them, you're just kind about everything, you do a lot of listening, not a lot of preaching. I don't like it when foreign people would come here and they preach at the Japanese. Just understand and respect the culture, the language of the people here, and try to have an open mind and a big heart. I think that you'll do fine. As long as you keep that big heart, you'll be fine. I've never once thought about taking advantage of anything that I was ever on. I always tried to do my very, very best. That's why TV wouldn't let me go for so long. I couldn't quit that job. And so if you always have that attitude, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I mean, obviously luck helps, but if you work hard, you'll be fine.
Well, there's this famous saying, right? You create your own luck.
Or be smart enough to realize when you are getting lucky, right? But yeah, you should definitely just try to be kind and, like I said, big heart. Like I always teach my teachers, I say, love your students, the little kids. Just love them. I mean, because they're little kids, just like any other country's little kids. They can be annoying. They can be fighting with each other, whatever. But if you have a ton of love in your heart, even for the ones that are bad actors and like to, cause problems, those kids will eventually figure it out. They'll turn around. And so you just always have to have more love.
Well, thank you, Mitch, for sharing your story and all your exciting experiences.
Yeah. If you want to come have me back, I'll come back anytime. I love Osaka.
We'd love to have you back. Is there anything that you feel like we didn't touch upon that you would have liked to share, like to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. Like I said before the interview, I can just talk forever. So if there is, and I think about it later, maybe we can do it on a different show.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Mitch, from Small Talk Japan, from Story Studios, and from Stapleton Eikaiwa, for coming all the way from Kagoshima today. This was Fish and Rice, Stories from Japan. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week. Bye.